හරිම සුමුදුයි.
Tonight on First at 9 this Friday, the 20th of October 2023. IMF incoming. The IMF reaches a staff-level agreement with Sri Lanka for the second tranche of the bailout package. Electric hikes. Electricity tariffs increased with effect from today. The next revision again in June of 2024. Budget bridge. Budget 2024 to be presented to Parliament on the 13th of November by President Ranil Wickremesinghe.
ඔබේ විශ්වාසය දෙනු සෙන්සුරයින් දැන් ළඟමැති ෆාමසියෙන් ලබාගත හැක.
This is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and a warm welcome to today's edition of AdaDerana's English News First at 9. I'm Jonathan Benedict. Let's kick off our top story for the day. In some welcome good news, the International Monetary Fund has reached a staff-level agreement with the Sri Lankan authorities for the second tranche of a $2.9 billion bailout. This disbursement was predicated on the completion of the first review under the Extended Funding Facility Programme, which was initially unlocked to Sri Lanka on the 20th of March this year. Addressing a media briefing this morning, the IMF mission for Sri Lanka said that the approval of the staff-level agreement by the IMF Executive Board will have access to the second tranche of the EFF amounting to around $330 million. However, the IMF mission is of the view that the implementation of prior actions by the authorities and the completion of financing assurance reviews is essential prior to the presentation of the staff report to the IMF Executive Board. In a joint statement issued last night by the International Monetary Fund's Senior Mission Chief for Sri Lanka, Peter Bro, and Deputy Mission Chief Katsiarina Sviridzenka, the mission stated that the IMF team reached a staff-level agreement with the Sri Lankan authorities on the first review under an economic reform program supported by a 48-month extended funding facility arrangement, following constructive discussions with the authorities in Colombo and during the World Bank IMF annual meetings in Marrakesh in Morocco. The statement noted that once the staff-level agreement, which is expected to be considered by the IMF management and the IMF Executive Board in the period ahead, is approved, it would have access to about $330 million, bringing the total IMF financial support disbursed under the arrangement to about $660 million. Addressing a media briefing this morning, the IMF mission for Sri Lanka commented on the performance of Sri Lanka under the program and the way forward to unlock the second tranche.
The ambitious reform agenda is starting to bear fruit with rapid disinflation and fiscal revenue rising from very low levels. Program performance at end June was satisfactory. All quantitative performance criteria were met except on expenditure areas, and all indicative targets were also met except on tax revenues. Most structural benchmarks were either met or met with delay. Notably, the authorities published on time the governance diagnostic report, making Sri Lanka the first country in Asia to do so. The economy is showing tentative signs of stabilization, but growth momentum remains subdued and economic recovery is not yet assured. Sri Lanka's external position weakened as a result of several factors, including slow progress on debt restructuring and reserve accumulation slowed in recent months. Agreeing on debt treatments consistent with restoring debt sustainability quickly will be key to resolving uncertainty that is constraining Sri Lankan businesses and external financing. Sustaining the reform momentum is needed to achieve stable and inclusive economic recovery. We welcome the authorities' commitment to increase revenues, improve governance and tax administration, and actively eliminate evasion. Cost recovery in energy pricing helps mitigate fiscal risks from state-owned enterprises. Further strengthening the social safety net is critical to protect the poor and the vulnerable. While inflation decelerated, continued monitoring is needed to anchor expectations. Rebuilding external buffers through strong reserves accumulation remains an important objective of the program. We also welcome the authorities' commitment to implement key recommendations of the governance diagnostic report. Concrete steps towards addressing corruption risks and strengthening accountability will build confidence and make growth more robust and inclusive. Following the domestic debt operation, the critical next step is to secure an agreement with official creditors on a debt treatment consistent with program parameters and debt targets. We took note of a tentative agreement between Sri Lanka and the Export-Import Bank of China and will analyze the details when we receive them. We urge all official creditors to move forward and agree on an appropriate debt treatment in line with the financing assurances they provided.
When is the staff agreement is expected to be taken up by the IMF Executive Board for consideration for approval?
Two things need to happen before we can present the staff report to the Executive Board. The first is the implementation by the authorities of the prior actions that have been agreed in line with the objectives of the program. And then the second is the completion of the so-called financing assurances reviews, which includes confirming whether adequate progress has been made with debt restructuring to give confidence that this restructuring will be concluded in a timely manner and also in line with the program's debt targets.
Could you give us some idea about the prior actions that we had to do and also whether the budget is a prior action?
The conditionality focuses on achieving the objectives of the program, including raising revenues and mitigating fiscal risks and ensuring strong governance reforms and safeguarding financial stability. So really there are no surprises there. And just like approximately 12 months ago, we are of course looking for a strong budget that can achieve that, with of course the objective being that the gap between expenditures and revenues needs to be narrowed so that Sri Lanka can once again find creditors who are willing to finance the remaining gap.
Meanwhile, State Minister of Finance Shehan Semasinga says that necessary measures will be taken to address concerns pertaining to revenue generation, which the IMF highlighted during the first review. Addressing a media briefing today, Semasinga said that the government hopes to complete the broadening of the tax net within the next few months. Speaking further, the Finance Minister expressed confidence in arriving at a debt resolution with the country's creditors in the near future.
Governance diagnostic report. මේකේ ප්‍රධාන කරුණු 16ක් තියෙනවා. මේ කරුණු 16න් සමහර කාරණා මේ වෙනකොටම පිටු කරලා තියෙනවා. සමහර කාරණා අයවැය ලේඛනය තුලත් සම්පූර්ණ වෙන නියමිතව තියෙනවා. මේකේ ප්‍රධානතම අරමුණ උනේ රජයේ දූෂණය සඳහා ඇති ඉඩකඩ හකුලා දැමීම.
The IMF has raised concerns about revenue, so are you all taking any special steps or introducing new taxes or doing anything like that in the budget to address this concern?
The main shortfall is revenue. So we'll have to take measures to ensure that revenue administration is being strengthened, especially the Inner Revenue Department, the Customs Department and the Excise Department. I think everybody who is paying taxes are with the government to ensure to fully digitize the Inner Revenue Department and ensure that everybody who has to pay taxes and who are within the thresholds pay taxes. So broadening the net will be a key aspect that the government is looking at, and I'm sure within the next couple of months we should be able to complete that process.
1 month back when IMF said the staff level agreement was not reached,
yes.
What was the key concern? Was it revenue? Was it the debt restructuring? What was the key concern?
No, revenue was the key concern. With regards to debt restructuring, we have achieved progress. We are very confident we will achieve a debt resolution very soon with our creditors.
Sri Lanka Parliament has unveiled the programme for the parliamentary sittings for the presentation of the appropriation bill for the 2024 fiscal year. President Ranil Wickremesinghe is expected to kick things off with the scheduled budget speech at 12 noon on the 13th of November. Thereafter, a 7-day debate will take place from 9:30 a.m. to 6 p.m. from the 14th to the 20th of November on the second reading of the budget. The voting on the second reading is scheduled for November 21st at 6 p.m. Subsequently, the committee stage debate will be held from 9:30 a.m. to 6 p.m. over 19 days from November 22nd to the 12th of December. The division on the third reading will commence at 6 p.m. on December 13th. Moving on to electricity news, the Public Utilities Commission of Sri Lanka have approved the third electricity tariff revision this year with effect from today. The upward tariff revision was implemented following a special request made by the Ceylon Electricity Board in a bid to raise the revenue of the state electricity provider to offset a reported 18 billion rupee loss, which is forecasted to be balanced out with the new price revision. According to the PUCSL, the next revision will be implemented in June of next year. Under the new tariff revision, which will be effective immediately until June of 2024, the unit price for the public that consumes between 0 and 30 electricity units will be increased to 12 rupees from its current 10 rupees. The fixed charge for the said category, which was at 150 rupees, will be increased to 180 rupees. The unit price for consumers of electricity between 31 and 60, which was at 25 rupees, will be raised to 30 rupees, while the 300 rupee fixed charge will increase to 360 rupees. The 32 rupee unit price, which existed to the members of the public that consume electricity units between 61 and 90 units, will increase to 41 rupees. Their fixed charge, which was at 400 rupees, will increase to 480 rupees. The consumers who use electricity between 91 and 120 units and 121 and 180 units will see their fixed price increase to 59 rupees from the previous 50 rupees. The fixed charge for the consumer category using electricity units between 91 and 120 units will be hiked to 1,180 rupees, while a 1,770 rupee fixed charge will be applicable for the consumer category falling in the range between 120 and 180. Consumers using 180 units of electricity or above will see their unit price rising to 89 rupees from 75 rupees. The fixed charge for those consumers, which was at 2,000 rupees, will increase to 2,360 rupees. Meanwhile, the unit charge for religious institutions consuming electricity between 1 and 30 units have been increased to 12 rupees from 10 rupees. The fixed charge is increased to 180 rupees. Religious institutions using 31 and 90 units will see an increase in their unit price to 24 rupees from 20 rupees. The fixed charge will be raised to 300 rupees. Meanwhile, a 41 rupee unit price will be applicable for religious places with an electricity consumption between 91 and 120 units, while the unit price of places consuming 121 and 180 will be 53 rupees. The new fixed charge for these categories will be 710 rupees and 1,770 rupees respectively. Religious places consuming 180 units or above will be charged with a new unit price of 59 rupees, while the new fixed price for the said category will be 2,360 rupees. With that said, a media briefing was held today pertaining to the new electricity tariff hike.
වසරට සාමාන්‍ය සංශෝධන දෙකක් ගන්න අතර සුවිශේෂී සංශෝධනයක් ගැනීමේ හැකියාව තිබෙනවා. හැබැයි මේ වතාවේ අපි කළේ සුවිශේෂී සංශෝධනයයි ජනවාරි මාසේ ගන්න සංශෝධන දෙක එකතු කරා.
මේ වර්ෂය පුරා අද වෙනකොට බිලියන 18ක ලාභයක් තියෙද්දි ඉදිරි මාස 3ේදී අලුත් අයපත් සංශෝධනයත් සමග අපි බිලියන 18ක ලාභයක් බලාපොරොත්තු. ඒ ලාභයෙන් අර පුදු වෙච්ච 18 පාඩුව මැකුණාම මේ මුදල් වර්ෂය තුල අපි බිඳුව කරා එනවා. පෙබරවාරි 15 ජූනි 30 පැවති මිලත් එක්ක සලකද්දී 100ට 1ක මිල වැඩිවීමක් පමණයි මේ වෙලාවේ සිද්ධ වෙලා තියෙන්නේ. ලබන අවුරුදු ජූනි 30 දක්වාම විශේෂ සිදුවීමක් සිද්ධ වුණේ නැත්නම් 100ට 1කින් විතරයි පෙර පැවති මිලට විදුලි මිල වැඩි වෙලා තියෙන්නේ.
Chinese President Xi Jinping highlighted his country's willingness to import more quality and specialized products from Sri Lanka, adding that he encourages Chinese enterprises to invest in Sri Lanka in order to assist in Sri Lanka's transformation and subsequent upgrade of its economy whilst achieving sustainable development. During his meeting today in Beijing with President Ranil Wickremesinghe, the Chinese president went on to say that China will continue to support Sri Lanka without the baggage of political agenda determining the relationship. During his visit to attend the third Belt and Road Forum for International Cooperation, President Ranil Wickremesinghe met his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping in Beijing today. Chinese President Xi confirmed that China stands ready to work with Sri Lanka to jointly promote high-quality Belt and Road cooperation. While expressing his desire to collaborate closely with President Ranil Wickremesinghe, President Xi said China is committed to assisting Sri Lanka in achieving economic stability without any political agenda. President Xi Jinping reiterated China's commitment to the One China policy and expressed gratitude for Sri Lanka's support for the Belt and Road initiative. He highlighted the port city and Hambantota port as key projects under this initiative and pledged to promote imports of Sri Lankan products to China and increase investments in Sri Lanka. Additionally, President Xi Jinping assured that China would provide friendly, practical and timely support for Sri Lanka's debt optimization program. In response, President Ranil Wickremesinghe expressed his appreciation for China's long-standing support to Sri Lanka. The Sri Lankan head of state informed President Xi Jinping about plans to construct a Sri Lankan Buddhist temple and stupa in commemoration of the visit of Faxian monk to Sri Lanka, and President Xi Jinping expressed China's support for these activities. President Ranil Wickremesinghe expressed Sri Lanka's hope to establish a maritime economic corridor linking China, Myanmar, Sri Lanka and South Africa. According to the President's media division, the conversation also emphasized the significance of positioning Sri Lanka as an economic hub in the Indian Ocean region. President Wickremesinghe underlined Sri Lanka's commitment to preserving peace and the identity of the Indian Ocean region, advocating for cooperation between India and China to foster development in Asia. Further, the president disclosed Sri Lanka's ambition to achieve its developed status by 2048, and he highlighted the substantial foundation provided by the 8-step program unveiled at the 3rd Belt and Road Forum for International Cooperation. The Chinese president encouraged Chinese enterprises to invest and do business in Sri Lanka in order to help Sri Lanka transform and upgrade its economy and achieve sustainable development.
You attended the first Belt and Road Forum as Sri Lankan Prime Minister and came to China once again for this year's forum after 6 years, which displayed your firm support for the Belt and Road initiative. I highly appreciate that. China and Sri Lanka enjoy a long-standing friendship. More importantly, the signing of the Rubber-Rice Pact between China and Sri Lanka in 1952 is a true reflection of the two sides' mutual support and unity for self-improvement. Presently, under the strong leadership of the Communist Party of China, the Chinese people are united to promote high-quality development and advance the great cause of building a strong country and achieving national rejuvenation on all fronts through a Chinese path of modernization. Under your leadership, Mr. President, Sri Lanka has tided over the most difficult time and is experiencing orderly social and economic recovery and development. I reiterate great importance of developing relations with Sri Lanka. I am willing to work with you, Mr. President, to cement political mutual trust, pursue high-quality Belt and Road cooperation, and establish new progress in advancing a strategic cooperative China-Sri Lanka partnership featuring sincere mutual assistance and everlasting friendship so as to deliver more benefits to our people.
I must commend Your Excellency for the successful 3rd Belt and Road Forum. From the first forum onwards, now we see a concrete shape taking place as far as the Belt and Road initiative is concerned. And within this framework, we've now got to determine the roles each of our country will play and the cooperation that we will have with each other.
Meanwhile, bilateral discussions between President Wickremesinghe and Chinese Vice Premier Ding Zhuxiang took place in Beijing yesterday. During these discussions, Vice Premier Zhu Zhang reaffirmed China's unwavering support for the development of the Colombo port city and the Hambantota port within the framework of the Belt and Road Initiative. Emphasizing Sri Lanka's commitment to preserving the identity and peace of the Indian Ocean region and advocating for the prevention of any power struggles in the area, President Wickremesinghe highlighted Sri Lanka's aspiration to enter into a free trade agreement with China. Meanwhile, a high-level discussion was held in Beijing yesterday where several prominent Chinese institutions have shown keen interest in extending academic and technical support for the envisioned International University on Climate Change in Sri Lanka. Representatives from various Chinese institutes engaged in climate-related initiatives have agreed to offer their expertise and support from both the academic and technological perspectives to assist Sri Lanka in its endeavour to establish an international university focused on climate change. During the discussion, President Wickremesinghe emphasised his commitment to making this endeavour a collaborative effort involving multiple parties rather than an individual undertaking within Sri Lanka. Welcome back. A hartal where citizens protested by closing their shops and arresting commercial activity was staged in several areas in the northern and eastern provinces in demand of solutions to several key problems, including the request for a fair investigation into threats received by Magistrate of Mullaitivu, Justice Saravana Raja. The hartal had been reportedly jointly organised by 7 Tamil political parties. A hartal where protesters closed their shops and refused to work was staged in several areas of the northern province, including Jaffna and Vavuniya, and in the eastern province. The hartal was staged as a demand to solutions to several issues, including urging the government to not allocate lands previously used by dairy farmers to build settlements and also requesting a fair investigation into threats received by Magistrate of Mullaitivu, T. Saravana Raja. Seven Tamil political parties in the area had jointly organised the hartal. Meanwhile, former governor of the Eastern Province, Anuradha Yahampath, expressed her views regarding allegations of expropriation of dairy farmers' lands.
ඒ දියුලපතාන ගම්මානයේ 1970 වන විට පවුල් 1000කට වැඩි ගාණක් ඉඳලා තියෙනවා 1983 ඉඳලා යුද්ධයෙන් බැටකන්නට සිදු වූවා මේ ගම්මානයේ අය. තමන්ගේ ඇඳිවත පමණක් එක්ක මේ අයට තමන්ගේ ගම්බිම් දමලා වෙනත් පළාත්වලට යන්නට සිදු වූවා. 2009 යුද්ධය අවසන් වූවායින් පසු මේ කණ්ඩායම නැවත ගම්මානයට ගිහින් ඒ වගා කටයුතු කරා. 2015 16 වෙනකන් කිසිම කරදරයක් නැතුව අපේ රටේ සෑම බිම් අඟලකටම ඕනෑම කෙනෙකුට යෑමට අවසර තියෙන්න ඕනේ. මේ අපේ රට ඒකට ಜಾති ભેදයක් ඇති කරන්න එපා. හැම ජාතියකටම සාමයෙන් සමගියෙන් එකට ජීවත් වෙන්නට පුළුවන්. කිසිම අයිතියක් නැහැ මඩකලපු දිස්ත්‍රික්කයේ පාර්ලිමේන්තු මන්ත්‍රීවරයෙකුට කියන්න මේ පාරම්පරික ගම්මානවල ඉන්න සිංහල වීම නිසා ඕන් ඉවත් කළ යුතුයි කියා. ඒ වගේම ජනාධිපතිතුමාටත් කියනවා සිංහල මිනිස්සුන්ට විතරක් එක නීතියකුත් දෙමළ මිනිස්සුන්ට විතරක් තව නීතියකුත් එක්ක වැඩ කරන්න එපා.
Israel's defense forces have provided an update about the hostages that were taken by Hamas during Hamas's unprovoked assault on Israeli citizens. Thankfully, most of the hostages are still alive. The violence in Gaza from the war between Israel and Hamas has escalated, with Israel confirming that more Hamas targets were eliminated following the evacuation notice that was given to Gazan residents by the Israeli government. Notable leaders, including the US President and the British Premier, touched down in Tel Aviv today as the world continues to stand in solidarity with Israel following the terror attacks. The Israel Defense Force has published new information on the status of hostages and missing persons taken by Hamas following their brutal and brazen attack on the 7th of October. The IDF said that the majority of hostages are still alive. Over 20 of the hostages are under the age of 18, while 10 to 20 of them are over the age of 60. It's unclear as to how many hostages overall are being held in Gaza. The IDF said that the number of missing is between 100 and 200 people, while a spokesperson for Hamas's military wing, the Al-Qasim Brigades, in a video statement on Monday said that the number was at least between 200 to 250. The spokesperson, Abu Obaida, said that the Al-Qasim Brigades held about 200 hostages, while the rest were held by other militant formations in Gaza, adding that it could not determine the exact number of hostages due to constant Israeli bombardment. In order to provide aid to displaced civilians, trucks from the Egyptian Red Crescent and the World Food Programme arrived this morning near the Rafah border. Trucks filled with essential medicines, food supplies and specialized nutrition for children are currently parked on the Egyptian side of the crossing, waiting to enter Gaza. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres arrived at the Rafah border today.
We have seen so many trucks loaded with water, with fuel, with medicines. So these trucks are not just trucks, they are a lifeline.
ගාසා තීරයේ 17 දෙනෙක් අපේ ජීවත් වෙනවා. ඔවුන් දැනට දකුණු කොටසේ රැඳී සිටින්නේ. ඔවුන්ට රටින් පිටවීම සඳහා රෆා බෝඩර් එක කියලා අපි කියනවා. ඊජිප්තු රජය අවසර දුන් පසු ක්‍රියාත්මක කරනවා කියලා ඒ නම් ලැයිස්තුව ඉල්ලුවා. අපි හවස් වරුවේම නම් ලැයිස්තුව පිටත් කරහරින් ලැබුවා.
Meanwhile, a joint statement issued by the Israel Defense Forces stated that Israel struck over 100 Hamas targets in Gaza overnight. The death toll of those killed since October 7th in the Gaza Strip has climbed to 4,127, including 1,661 children. An additional 13,162 people have been injured. Meanwhile, British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak arrived in Israel, the latest world leader to descend on the country as it responds to its deadliest attacks on Israeli soil in decades. During his meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, he expressed Britain's unwavering support and solidarity with Israel.
You describe this as Israel's darkest hour. Well, then it's for me to say I'm proud to stand here with you in Israel's darkest hour. I've seen the scenes over the past day that have shocked all of us. We mourn the loss of every innocent life, civilians of every faith, every nationality. We also recognise that the Palestinian people are victims of Hamas too.
Prime Minister Sunak, Rishi, I want to thank you for your solidarity, your clear, unwavering support from the minute this war began. More heartwarming than standing with Israel, it's standing in Israel. And the fact that you came here to do that is a very strong statement of support, which we deeply appreciate.
In stocks news, the Colombo Stock Exchange recorded significant gains after a lackluster week of performances to close out on a high. The Colombo Stock Exchange all-share price index closed up 2.46% to end at 10,850.53 points, its highest daily rise since July 4th. For the week, the index rose 0.35%, snapping 2 weeks of declines. Sri Lanka Telecom and CT Holdings were the top gainers on the index, rising 5.71% and 14.06% respectively. However, trading volume on the index fell to 36.7 million shares from 50.3 million shares in the previous session. The S&P SL20 meanwhile rose by 3.32% to close at 3,050.20 points. Equity market turnover fell to 910 million rupees from 1.13 billion rupees in the previous session. The diversified financial sector was the top contributor to market turnover, while the banking sector was the second highest contributor. Foreign investors were net sellers, offloading stocks worth 122.2 million rupees, while domestic investors were net buyers, purchasing shares worth 823.7 million rupees. With that, let's take a look at how the rupee fared against other major currencies as the day progressed. Welcome back. The Ceylon Chamber of Commerce has extended its congratulations to the government of Sri Lanka for reaching a staff-level agreement on the first review of Sri Lanka's extended funding facility arrangement with the International Monetary Fund. In a statement, the Chamber said that the government paving the way for the second tranche, the momentum of the current reforms agenda must be maintained without derailment of the ongoing process. With that, let's take a look at more corporate news from Sri Lanka today. The Ceylon Chamber of Commerce has praised the government for reaching a staff-level agreement on the first review of Sri Lanka's extended funding facility arrangement with the International Monetary Fund. While acknowledging its accomplishments, the Chamber urges the government to maintain the momentum of the current reform agenda to steer the economy toward recovery and stable and inclusive growth. The Ceylon Chamber also noted that the IMF's governance diagnostic assessment resonates with its own calls for reforms in critical areas. In other news, SMB Finance plc announced the opening of its newest branch in Bandaragama, demonstrating its commitment to grow the company's business reach. The branch was ceremoniously opened by Mr. Ravi Wijeratna, the chairman of SMB Finance plc, under the patronage of Chief Executive Officer Supul Vijayasinghe of Corporate Management and Staff. The Board of Directors of Ceylon Hospitals plc resolved to appoint Hector Manil Anthony Jayasinghe as an independent non-executive director with effect from the 1st of November 2023. Jayasinghe is a fellow member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Sri Lanka and the Chartered Institute of Management Accountants UK, and has over 41 years of advisory and industry experience across key sectors in Sri Lanka, Maldives and Bhutan. He was the country managing partner of Ernst & Young Sri Lanka and Maldives from 2021 to 2023, Head of Assurance Practice in Sri Lanka and the Profession Practice Director of Sri Lanka from 2003 to 2023. That's all the news I have for you. I'm Jonathan Benedict. Good night. Have a blessed weekend ahead.